And we got that news over the weekend. The Lagos State government banned the use and distribution of single-use plastics such as styrofoam in the state. The Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources, Tokunbo Wahab, made a declaration in a statement that was yesterday. And we also have issues around the central bank's calendar for 2024. We're discussing these and other issues with Mr. Sam Chidoka, Managing Director, Kairos Capital Limited. Great to have you on the show. First one between us for the year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and thanks for having me.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you. So quite a big move by the Lagos State government there with this ban. Definitely will be gauging enforcement, going forward. But definitely this would have an impact on producers of styrofoams and most of these plastics. How are you seeing this move?
Well, so you've got to look at it from not just the angle of the effect it will have on the companies, but you also have to look at the effect it has on Lagos State as a base and as a state, right? We've seen so much pollution. We've seen so much clogging of our drainage system by the end users of styrofoam. Now, it becomes difficult for governments to regulate use and to regulate cleanliness in the environment, but perhaps it's easier to stop this production and people can use other forms of containers that are less harmful to the environment and clogs our drainages less more so. Personally, I'm not a fan of bans, but on this one, I stand with Lagos State government.
But looking at the timing, shouldn't the government, give this kind of ban, some time, before, enforcing, to enable, maybe most of these companies actually pivot, give them time to pivot, because this is going to, impact their revenue, going forward and employment at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, valid points, but again, many of the companies that are into production of styrofoam are also into production of various other plastic type products. What would generally change is the type of mold they use and what is the end product. I'm not aware that there are companies that produce styrofoam and that's all they do. Many of the companies into plastics and styrofoams and all of that actually have diverse type of products and services they offer to their clients. So I'm guessing that what's happening to many of them is just a shutdown of just one arm of production. And I believe it should be fine. But ultimately, government has to make a call. If you look at videos that have been seen and research that has been done in terms of clogging of our drainage system and the flooding, attendant flooding that happens during the rains, I think the overriding public interest is more important.
Yeah, definitely. We see Nigeria's plastic industry there. Consumption of plastics in Nigeria grew about 4 kilograms in 2007 to 6.1 kilograms in 2022. And definitely this includes other forms of, plastic. But definitely I know we have a couple of companies listed on the NGX that, into production of, plastics and, I'm sure styrofoams. Too. What are you seeing? How are you seeing this impacting their, bottom line and top line, when they send out some of their reports? Definitely, this is just Lagos State, but who knows if other states would also do the same thing?
Yeah, so you are right in that it is Lagos State, but the truth be told, Lagos State is the bulk of business in terms of, if you look at in terms of growth in businesses, in terms of tax collection, VAT collections in Lagos State, it outstrips most of the states. And many of these plastic producers are actually based in Lagos. If you go to the solar axis, you see many of the companies that produce these plastics. But yet again, like I said, there is overriding public interest. On the NGX today, there are not many plastic companies that are listed. I probably know of one or maybe two. Again, we do not expect that this will have a material effect on their bottom line and on their revenue, because again, it's just one side of their revenue that has been banned at this. It is easier for them to pivot and do other things. But more importantly, we have to think about the ecological effect of some of these things. I mean, look at the video that is on that you're showing on the screen right now, and you can see that a good percentage of what is causing the pollution is styrofoam. It's got to go.
Yeah, definitely got to go. Thank you for that. But let's look at other burning issues now. Talking about, well, it's another year, and definitely apex banks, central banks globally are now gearing for policy direction, in 2024. Some are already, kind of meeting their targets, when it comes to inflation at this point. But we can't say the same here. But we have dates now for policy meetings in 2024. That was released over the weekend, I think on Friday, by the CBN. We see the new dates. Definitely the first one is coming in February. If you can put the dates up for me, we're seeing the first one coming in February, then the subsequent dates for February, we see it's 2 dates there all the way to November. But this is a tentative. That means there could be some changes, going forward. So, Mr. Chidoka, how are you seeing this? How are markets seeing these dates? At least now we have dates, at this point. Are the markets relieved now?
Yeah, well, it's a sign of relief that at least now we have dates. You remember that the last MPC didn't hold, and then we didn't know what dates that MPC would be holding. Now that we have the dates, is a sign of relief from the markets because, it's important that when they meet, what happens to the monetary policy rate, whether it goes up or if they hold it or they decrease it. I believe the last time monetary policy rate was increased to 18.75%, and that becomes the base rate from which every other rate takes its function in the market. It affects the yield curve on the fixed income side of the market, and it affects even the banking rates, whether interbank rates or the rates at which banks are creating risk assets. So it's an important matrix in the economy. And again, we have seen inflation continuously rise. Now we're at over 28% in terms of inflation. So we need to know what the policy direction is. We know that it's not entire economic policy direction that MPC comes up with, but at least on the monetary policy basis, it's important that we know. So yes, it's a sign of relief from the market that we now have dates.
All right, so we have the dates now, but the formation of the committee, crucial for decision making has not been established as of yet, but definitely I know the CBN should communicate that to us soon. But how do you see, what kind of committee are you, would you like to see, at this point? We know at the end of the day, it's about votes on either to hold or to raise or to actually, cut. But definitely, I don't think cut is in the books right now for Nigeria. But what would you like to see, for the first meeting in 2024 for Nigeria?
Yeah, so I agree with you. Cutting of rates may not be in the books right now. But however, what I'd like to see is, first of all, I'd like to see independence in the Monetary Policy Committee. You don't want a committee that is run by the central bank governor and whatever the governor decides, and that's what stands. So you want to see people of integrity, you want to see people that know economics and understand not just the theory, but understand the practice and understand what the effect of the decisions they take at those meetings mean to the larger economy of Nigeria. So now we have dates. We're hopeful that the president will go ahead and appoint other members of that committee, and that those members of the committee will be men and women who know their onions as far as economics is concerned, especially on the monetary policy side, and we begin to see the effect of the decisions they take on monetary policy and on the economy as a whole. So I expect that since we have February as the first meeting date, that sooner than later we will see the constitution of the committee.
All right, definitely 2 issues before the MPC committee for the first meeting. That's in February. Inflation from December, 28.92%. And definitely they'll be working with data from January, also when, the meeting comes. So looking at the Naira, there's still pressure on the FX market on the Naira at this time. Did close weak last week, and in the parallel market, the same thing. How do you see the CBN, taming these 2 issues in the next meeting and going forward in 2024?
Well, a fellow market analyst did say to me that when the CBN governor was appointed, that he wished him the best and he also offered him some commiserations because it wasn't going to be an easy task. It's the same thing I would like to say to those that will be appointed into the committee. I wish them the best, but also offer them my commiserations, because you've come at a time when all the major indices that we use to measure the economy are either on the downward spiral or pointing negative. Inflation is high, unemployment is high, the naira is weak, exchange rate is beating up the naira, and then interest rate is also high in the market. So everything that could be difficult to handle, it's already difficult. What I would like to see the Monetary Policy Committee do is to focus. Let's have a focus, let's have a target. Perhaps we want to deal, first of all, with inflation and exchange rates. So focus on those two. If you focus on those two, we're hopeful that we can see, we've seen inflation has continued to rise, almost at 29%. We expect that maybe end of January will be closer to 30%, right? But we need to drastically try and reduce inflation. So all the tools that are within the monetary policy confines to reduce inflation, whether you need to begin to also continue to tighten and increase the monetary policy rate, or whether we begin to cut government spending, or whether we begin to deal with the issue of the currency, because there's a relationship between a weak naira and high inflation. The inflation we have is supply side inflation, and also the naira is weakened, and that affects and continues to drive inflation, because anything that is imported, you have to sell at replacement cost. So I would expect the MPC to focus on reducing inflation and to also see how we reduce some of the capital controls on the FX market side, and how we try and increase supply on a sustainable model. We borrowed some money, but I do not think that's sustainable. We have to find a sustainable model of generating income. Maybe we need to look again at agriculture, whether we have comparative advantage in certain crops, and we should be farming and exporting and getting much needed FX apart from oil and gas.
Talking about sustainability at this point, we see the NGX, the All Share Index, has hit more all-time highs. You know, last week we're talking about 95,000 for the All Share Index, 95,000 points at intraday. Right now, businesses are battling, rising costs amid, shrinking, consumer spending. Looking at the two issues of inflation and currency devaluation, help us understand how the stock market is still doing so well regardless of this macro realities.
Okay, so the stock market is a beneficiary of what's happening in the economy as a whole, and what's happening especially in the fixed income markets. When you have inflation at about 29%, and you look at the fixed income market, and yields on the market for 1 year paper, whether on the government side or on the corporate side especially, are sub-inflation. So you're getting a negative carry, a negative return every time you invest in the fixed income market. It's a negative real return when you adjust for inflation. So what do people do? You look for other places where you can get better return that either matches or surpasses inflation. And so there's a pivoting to the equity market, and that's part of what the Nigerian, the NGX All Share Index is benefiting from today. That's one. Another thing that we find is, remember, the pricing that you're seeing on the market is also a reflection of the economy trying to adjust for the devaluation in currency. If you look at the increase you've seen in particular stocks over time, and you adjust it for the devaluation of the currency, in certain stocks, we're not even fully recovered. So there is that revaluation in terms of what you expect as an upswing in equity and the devaluation in the currency. Secondly, there is some form of liquidity in the market from also the pension assets that are chasing 16 to 17 trillion naira in assets under management, and they're now pushing some of that into the equities market. Some foreign portfolio investors are coming back gradually because of the reduction in some of the capital controls that we've had. So all of these things are working together for the good of the equities market, because intrinsically, some of the stock haven't quite done better. And finally, there has been some new listings. BFD Group got listed on the NGS, Mikio got listed. Those two stocks alone boosted the All Share Index, and the capitalization of the exchange by over 60 billion naira. And so it's a good ride for the market.
Right. Now, I guess we're expecting more listings in 2024. So definitely that's also going to add, to the market cap of the NGX. But thank you so much for your perspective today, Mr. Sam Chidoka, Managing Director at Kairos Capital Limited. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.